Let's try something new. I'm going to treat today's video more like a Q&A with all of the common questions that I get asked about selling your home, especially in the Cleveland area, but this kind of pertains to everyone around. So let's hop right into it. Now before we get started, my name is Sam Oler. I'm a realtor in the greater Cleveland area. So if you're starting to think about making a move to this area, whether it be 9 days or 90 days, maybe even a couple years, feel free to reach out to me because I'm gonna help you be able to start planning that move. You can find all my contact information down in the description, but let's get started with today's topic, which is going to be selling your home in the Cleveland area. Now, the most common question I get asked, obviously, as a realtor is, what is my home worth? Now, the easy answer to that is just reach out to me with your address and I can get you a basic idea of what it is worth. However, I'll probably need to have some sort of walkthrough just to see what the condition of the house is in. And it's not really anything that is going to be where I take photos on the first round. It's basically just going to be getting an idea so I can get you an exact number of what it's worth, and then we can start to talk about what updates that are worth making, just so that way you can get the maximum value for your home. If you're wanting to check the value of the house yourself, you have the ability to go into Zillow and just see what their estimate is. The other thing that you really should do, and kind of how I do my job, is I go in, I look for houses that are incredibly close to what you have, and I start to compare what all of those sold for, and I start to adjust the prices based on what your house has compared to their houses. But realistically, Zillow is getting a little bit better with their estimates. They're not entirely perfect, and if you're in kind of a more rural area and there's not a lot of house sales out by you, it can be kind of off. So realistically, you should be reaching out to a professional. Another thing that you can do that will make it a little bit more accurate is to go to 3 different websites. You're going to go to Zillow, get the Zestimate, Realtor.com, get the estimated home value. Go to Redfin.com, take their estimated home value, and then add them up and divide by how many you have. That'll give you an average, and that is going to give you a pretty good ballpark as well. Moving into the next question, which is how can I increase the value of my home before selling? There's another easy answer to that, and it is deep clean. Hire a professional, or if you know what you're doing, do an incredibly deep clean on the house. Now, I'm not talking like cleaning the inside of the oven. I'm talking opening the windows, pulling them out of their casement so that way you can clean the inside and the outside of it, get the window sills, get everything, be super in depth with the clean, because people are going to notice that kind of stuff when they're walking through your house. Something as simple as a furnace return that has some fuzz on it is gonna stand out to buyers, and they're gonna think that the house was not really taken care of. So you wanna make sure that you do an incredibly deep clean on the house. And realistically, a lot of the time that's all you need to do in order to list the house. Most people are gonna wanna come in and kind of change some stuff out. So unless you have a lot of equity or you're in a really good position, you're more than likely not gonna have to do a lot of renovations. And as far as the renovations that are worthwhile to do, I have a separate video about that on my account, so feel free to go watch that video, see what makes sense compared to your budget versus how much it costs, because that's really what's gonna matter. If you're gonna be spending $25,000 on a kitchen and you're only gonna go up about $30,000 in value, then it really doesn't make sense to do, because you're only gonna make about $5 extra grand, and you're probably gonna be sitting for 3 to 4 months while this kitchen gets worked on. But realistically, the general rule of thumb for selling your house is that the cleaner it is, the more appealing it's gonna be. Next question. What is the best time to sell my house? Now, depending on what market you're in, it's gonna change entirely. If you are in a warmer market like Arizona, California, you're probably gonna have an easier time selling throughout the year. But if you're in a place like Cleveland, like I am, in the winter, statistically, prices drop, less buyers are out and active, and the cold weather here is the biggest deterrent. Now, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's all have a big part in that, but I would say November through the end of February is a pretty slow season for the real estate market. Now, if you're a buyer during this time, you are sitting in a pretty good spot, just because you're not gonna have a ton of competition. Now, honestly, I don't think it's really a bad time to sell during the winter, just because there are also less listings that are going active during this time. So you're not gonna be competing with a lot of other people to sell yours. And the other nice part about it is that the buyers that are out there during this time, you know that they are incredibly serious about buying a home because they're looking in the least desirable time. There's a couple different weekends and times throughout the summer that people have celebrations or are going back to school, and that it's not the right time to list during those weeks. However, anytime from March to, I would say, the end of August is a great time to list your house, because you are going to get that pre-school rush where people are going to want to move in before school starts for their kids, so that way they can focus on having an easy time transitioning them back going to school every day. Next one is going to be, what are the costs involved with selling a home? Now, there are a few different fees that are going to be involved with selling your home, with the bulk of them being title fees and realtor commissions. And I always tell my sellers to budget right around 8 to 10% of the sale, just so that they can cover those fees. Now, a realtor is going to charge you between 5 and 7%. The title company is probably going to charge you right around 2%. And then the buyers have the opportunity to ask you to cover some of their closing costs. It's not in every sale, but they have the opportunity to do that. So might as well budget it and then be pleasantly surprised if you don't have to pay it. Moving on to the next one, should I make improvements before listing the house? And the short answer to that is probably not. I definitely recommend getting a pre-inspection on the house, just because the inspector is going to go through, test all the outlets, check the attic, look at all the insulation, look at all the wiring, look inside the electric box to make sure everything is copacetic, so that way they can bring up any issues that do arise, and then you can fix those, and then you can show the buyers that you had an inspection done on the house and that all of the potential problems were fixed. That way it gives them a peace of mind, and then that way you're not having any unexpected things that you're going to have to pay for during the buying process. The other thing that having that pre-inspection shows is that you are serious about selling the house and handing off a good quality piece of real estate to the buyer. Next, we've got, how long will it take to sell my home? As long as it's priced correctly, and that is the biggest thing when you're listing a house, you shouldn't have any issues getting it under contract within a few weeks, at least in this market. We just came out of a pandemic and houses were selling within a couple days back then, but we're starting to slow down a little bit and reach a more normalized market, which means houses in the Cleveland area are gonna sit between, I would say, 2 weeks to 60 days. 60 days is starting to get to be a pretty long time, but it's not uncommon for it to sit for a little while now at this point. Once you get the house under contract, you're probably gonna be under contract for about 30 to 45 days, depending on what the loan type is, because they're gonna have to do their inspections, they're gonna have to get their loan approval, they're gonna have to do all of the title work, and realistically, the title work could take about 7 to 14 days. And with a cash deal, you're probably gonna land right around 10 to 14 days under contract. So there are a couple different possibilities as far as how long you'll be under contract, but that is kind of what you can expect. What documents and paperwork do I need to get together for the sale? Now, the majority of the documents that you're gonna have to get together are gonna be personal documents, but another one is going to be related to any maintenance that was done on the home, especially if it has a warranty, because it's gonna need to be passed off to the buyer so they have access to that in case something were to go wrong. The other things that you're gonna have to get together is going to be your personal information. For the title company, it's probably gonna be a driver's license. And if the house is in some sort of LLC or business name, you're gonna need all of your business documents showing that you are the owner of that business. And then the other thing is, if you've got a loan on the house, you're going to need a payoff estimate to give to the title company, so that way they can transfer the correct amount of funds to the lender, so that way everything gets buttoned up when you go to sell the house to the new owner. Moving into the next one, what is the role of a real estate agent in selling my house? As your real estate agent, it is my job to market your house to as many people as possible that would potentially want to buy it, and then also facilitate the deal to make sure everything is getting done in a timely manner. Now, as far as marketing goes, I'm having 50 to 100 conversations a day about real estate, so the chances of me selling your house are extremely likely compared to some other options that you have for selling your home. And when you list with me in particular, I have a strategy and a campaign that reaches thousands more people than your average agent. It's not just listing it on the MLS and waiting for other agents to show the house. Our marketing strategy is like no other. Now, the last thing that the real estate agent is going to provide is going to be experience. If you're with a good agent like myself who's been through hundreds of transactions, you're gonna have an easy process, and the agents are gonna be able to foresee possible issues, so that way they don't arise, or they could possibly be prevented before anything unexpected comes up. This will save you a lot of heartache and running around in circles trying to get the deal done. So that way, like I said, your life is incredibly easy throughout this whole process. You don't even have to lift a finger. The real estate agent will be doing all the heavy lifting. Next question is gonna be, how can I stage my home to attract potential buyers? Now, with me, staging is a debatable topic, because in the Cleveland area, we're not in a market that is incredibly dependent on having the house staged. Where it makes the most sense, in my opinion, is going to be houses that are higher end and need that extra aesthetic to attract a buyer, just so they can see exactly what the home provides and what it would look like to live in there. Now, this doesn't go without saying that it does help houses that are at the more average price point in this market. But when you look at the cost of staging versus the cost of what you're going to get out of the house, it doesn't always make sense. If you're wanting to do it, it is going to make it a lot easier for a buyer to picture them living in this house. However, if you are at the more average price range, you're gonna have the majority of the market touring your house, so there are going to be plenty of people who are going to be just fine without it. Next one is, what are the legal aspects and obligations when selling a home? Now, I am not a lawyer, but what I can say is that when you enter into a contract, it is legally binding. So if you do sign something, you better be planning on executing it. I do know that most purchase contracts protect the buyer way more than they protect the seller as far as being able to back out. So when you're in this scenario, you got to be careful if you do decide to end up not wanting to sell. Moving on to the next one, how can I negotiate a fair sales price? And after working in the industry for so long, I've realized that it's not really a me versus the buyer scenario. It's more of a team effort to get the deal done. Because when you go under contract with someone, they obviously want to buy the house and you obviously want to sell it, but there are some things that can arise during the negotiations that will change that. Both sides need to be happy with the end outcome, and that usually ends in some sort of compromise within reason. Now, right off the bat, depending on if you've got multiple offers, you're probably going to be in a good spot to ask for a higher price from these people. But if you've only got one offer that you're working with, you don't want to lose that offer. So depending on where it came at, you can counter it and get some more money, or you can just accept it the way that it is if you're happy. Another way to guarantee that fair/listing contract price, you are going to be able to have an appraisal done. That is going to be about $500 to $700 depending on the size of the house and location. I don't recommend doing it because what I do for you when I give you what I think the house is going to sell for is very similar to what an appraisal is, but it is not going to cost you anything. Something to keep in mind while you're under contract is that there are going to probably be some sort of inspections, and no house is perfect, so it's probably going to reveal some sort of issue with the house, and the buyer's more than likely going to come back and ask you to either fix it or reduce the purchase price a little bit, and I think that is totally fine to do within reason. Now, what I would suggest doing is getting some sort of quotes and then going from there. But it's important to remember that when these issues arise, they need to be related to health and safety. They're not going to be asking for someone to replace the floors or repaint a wall. That is definitely out of the picture. Moving on to the last and final question, it is going to be, what are the current market trends in my area? Now, in Cleveland, I can tell you that it is still pretty much a seller's market. With the rates going up, you are going to have a drop off in buyers because they don't want to pay that, or they got priced out of what they could afford. And over the last few months, there are less listings. So with the drop off of buyers and the drop off of listings, you're having a very similar market to where it's competitive to get into houses, but we're not selling for 20,000 over like we were before. It's maybe 5,000 if you're in multiple offers. And if there's only a couple offers on the house, it's probably at or below listing price. So it's just something to keep in mind as we start to transition into a more normal market, because what we saw over the last couple of years was not normal by any means. And it's honestly probably going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity that has already passed. So when you go to list your house, you need to understand what kind of market you're in, so that way you're not disappointed with the type of offers that you receive. If you're watching this in the future and you need a more up-to-date idea of what today's market's like, feel free to reach out to me. I'm super easy to get a hold of. All my contact information is down in the description. So if you're thinking about hopping into the market, whether it be in 9 or 90 days, I am going to be around to help you. And honestly, I'd be very honored to have the opportunity to interview for the role as the person who's going to help you sell your home. So definitely reach out to me if you're considering doing so. If you find yourself down in the description checking out some of my other social media, or maybe looking for my contact information, before you go, hit that like button and subscribe, because it's going to keep you up to date with everything that is going on in the Cleveland market. But with all that being said, I'm going to leave the video there. I'll catch you in the next one.